Welcome to Memoirs of a Modern Marriage. This is our 10th episode. We are your hosts. My name is Dave.
And I'm Liz.
And today is, like I said, our 10th episode, so we have a special treat. I'm inviting my friend John Alan and his wife Snoopy to be our guests today. Hi, guys. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
We're doing fantastic. Thanks.
I'm actually not doing too bad. I mean, we woke up, about 3 hours ago. So time's a little bit different. Just so everybody knows, John and Snoopy are from Norway. Actually, John's from where we live, right here in Akron, Ohio. But he ended up in Norway, and he's got one hell of a story to tell. And I would like to hear some of that today.
Oh, I'm ready to tell. When it comes to storytelling, we like telling stories about ourselves the most. So
I know that feeling all too well.
Let's just admit to arrogance, okay? Let's just admit to it.
But so you're from Akron originally.
Well, I was born in Akron, and the summer after second grade, we moved to Norton. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So I'm a country boy at heart.
Yeah, I feel you there.
Yeah. Norton has built up a little bit since then, but back then it was very rural. You know, we had like acres of cornfields right in front of our house, and in the back a lot of woods and stuff like that. But it's still fairly rural today, but it was even more so when I was young.
Oh yeah, you should see Norton now. It's pretty built up.
Yeah. The last time I was there was in 2015, and I was surprised about how much it's built up. But again, back then it was definitely the rural small town.
Yeah, and see, myself, I'm from Warren, which is right outside of Youngstown. Yeah. That's where I was born and raised. I've lived all over the country, and I found myself in Akron, and I absolutely love it here.
Mm-hmm. Do you? Because I hear a lot of people, my family members included, just talking bad about Akron.
Well, I mean, no. I just have pride for the neighborhood that we live in. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, and like being from the Youngstown area, this is definitely a step up. I mean, it's no Salinas, California, but it's, I mean, just like any other city, it does have its crime rate, you know.
Sure.
I was actually surprised when you moved here and you said that this was the biggest city you've ever lived in.
Yeah, it is, because Warren is pretty much a ghost town anymore. Mm-hmm. And but I kind of look at it as, you know, this city has a lot of potential if it's ran right. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people who are trying to bring it back to what it was.
Yeah.
So John, so you somehow ended up in Chicago, correct?
Yeah. After I graduated high school there in Norton, I went on a football scholarship to Ohio University, and after that, I went into the U.S. Marines, where I met a woman who I was married to and later divorced, and she was from the Chicago area. So after my time in the Marines and after truck driving for a little while, where I lived in North Carolina with her right outside the Marine Corps base, Camp Lejeune. And then after a year or so, we moved to the South Chicago suburbs. So that's what brought me there. And then almost right away, I saw that they needed police officers in one of the suburbs there. So I applied for that, made the hiring list, and became a police officer. So I worked as a cop for almost 7 years there in the South Chicago suburbs. Oh, wow. Then that's where I met Snoopy, way back in whenever. eons ago. It's yeah. So Chicago, I lived there, but it never felt like home. I tell you, not everything was good about growing up in Norton. There was a lot of foolishness and a lot of ugliness there, but Norton was home. So to go from that, as rural and quiet as it was back when I was growing up, to go to a big city like Chicago, it was quite a step. So it just never felt right. I didn't feel like I was at home actually until we came here to Norway. We came here in 2002.
Okay.
Oh, wow. So you've been there for a while now.
Yeah, it'll be 20 years next month in June.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only seen it in pictures. I absolutely love the way it looks. One of these days, maybe I'll head that way. Who knows?
Well, I tell you, I've been here for 20 years and it still feels, well, it comes across so often that I'm thinking, how in the world did I get here? It's still amazing, the nature is still beautiful, the people are still interesting. I think it's made me a better person having that experience of moving out of the U.S. and having a different perspective. Of course, I started to get that perspective when I was in the U.S. Marines, but serving overseas and whatnot. But to actually put down my roots and live here has been quite the experience. So I'm a better person because of it. And it's all her fault.
Yeah. So you said that you met Snoopy out Chicago way. How did that take place?
You want to tell?
Oh, well, we had a friend of mine that I known since I was about, I don't know, 13. She was living in that area where John was living, and
A Norwegian woman who had moved there.
And they trained at the same gym. So she kept talking about this nice guy she met who was a bodybuilder. And I said, "Nah, I'm not interested in bodybuilders. I'm tired of them. They kind of, full of themselves."
Yeah, they're bodybuilders.
So, yeah, they're bodybuilders. They just, yeah. So, and then I went to visit her, and she introduced us. And the first time we met, I guess that was, oh, okay. Well, we said hi, and that was about it. And I watched your show when you were in that competition, the bodybuilding competition, actually. Yeah. And then I came back, I think a year or so
later, roughly.
Yeah, roughly.
That's when the sparks flew, the second time we met.
Yeah.
By then I was finished with my marriage and the timing was right. So, that was the start of our little fairy tale.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
Got you out on town and some dancing.
So we met and started our relationship around 2000, and then we got married in 2001, April of 2001, and then we moved here to Norway in June of 2002. Yeah,
that's one heck of a story.
Well, there's a lot of details we didn't give you, but.
Well, I mean, those details, if you feel like sharing them, by all means, we love that kind of shit.
Well, no, the thing is we always we always talked about how, one day we would like to move to Norway. I had been here, before we got married, I had been here to visit her. And so I saw what it was like. I saw what it was all about. It's like, that would be a nice place to move to someday, when we retire.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, as we know, life always gives us twists and turns, and it doesn't hardly ever go the way we plan. No. And what happened was, working as a cop there in the Chicago suburbs, I was a narcotics and gang cop. And long story short, I was investigating a case. It was a pretty big case where it was a local gang or local group of people who were involved in all kinds of crime, both locally, statewide, nationwide, and international. We're talking about drug sales, gun sales, prostitution, murder for hire, all kinds of stuff.
Credit card scam. Right?
Credit card scams, financial. I mean, it was a pretty organized group of people doing a lot of dirty stuff. Mm-hmm. And one day, this was at like 11:30 at night. We were getting ready to go to bed, and we got a phone call from our neighbor, this old lady, maybe in her 70s, the kind of neighbor who's always,
Nosy.
I would come home at like
Which
2
is
o'clock in the
very
morning
nice.
after working a shift, and she would be
Yeah.
peeking out the window to see what was going on.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, it served us well because she called us. It's like 11:30 at night, and she says, I just saw some people jumping over the fence coming into your backyard.
Oh, wow.
And I just knew right away what was going on.
Didn't she say that they had guns though?
Yeah, she said she saw, I think she said she saw 3 guys jumping over the fence, and she said at least 2 of them had guns in their hand that she was able to see. So I knew right away it was this gang or this crew that was being investigated, and they had found out where we lived. So Snoopy calls 911. I jump up and get on my radio. We always would bring that with us.
Of course.
Pull out my gun and everything. Long story short, to make this segment short, they ended up catching one of the guys. 2 of the guys got away. Fast forward to the next morning. Snoopy goes to work at this gym in the next town over where she was working as an instructor. And like 20, 25 guys show up at her place of employment. People from
crazy.
this crew. Oh, it's crazy. It's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So apparently they had found out where she worked. So of course all of the cops from the entire area, our town and all of the next towns over and all the suburbs flock there, do what they have to do. I drove Snoopy that evening. Was it that evening or the next day?
The next day.
I think it was the next morning. Put her in the car and drove her all the way up to Minnesota where we had some friends. And she stayed there. And that's the last time Snoopy lived in our house there in the south suburbs of Chicago. Because a week or 2 after that, she flew back to Norway. I came out there just to touch base with her and kind of talk things through. And where we landed was that I quit that job and moved here to Norway and landed here on the 5th of June, 2002. Long story short, but that's the drama that actually brought us here. So we came here under circumstances totally different from what we had planned. I quit a job. I quit a career that I was having a lot of fun with, that I was quite successful at. But when I weigh up the potential consequences, where she could end up getting hurt,
Right.
There was no question about what was the right thing to do, especially when, and I'm going to throw this out there, especially when my police department didn't give me the support that I felt they should have given me. When I figured I don't have these guys getting my back like I feel they should, I'm out of here. I'm gone.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And, with those kind of jobs, there can be a lot of collateral damage, I mean,
absolutely.
Not just to you, your loved ones, stuff like that. And it's scary. I mean, and that's crazy. That's something you only see in movies, that's pretty wild. So
it was to the point to where the first 5 or 6 years when we came here to Norway, we had an unregistered address, unregistered telephone for our protection in case these people, well, we knew for a fact that one of the people in this organization had a girlfriend who is known peripherally by Snoopy. So you talk about a small world. One of these guys had a girlfriend who knew Snoopy. So we were being very careful the first few years we were here.
Yeah.
That's very hard to get a secret address and phone number here in Norway. You have to have a lot of proof.
Yeah, so we had to submit documents and tell the government authorities here pretty much what the case was so that we could get that protected address and protected telephone.
Yeah. That's wild. That's scary. I know that would scare the shit out of me. But my hat's off to you on that one, man. Like that's a job that I know I couldn't do.
It's not for everybody, and I think we're seeing a lot of it today that it's not for everybody. There's a lot of cops out there who are excuse my language, fucking up pretty
Yeah.
bad. There's too many cops who are not made for that job, and yet they're getting that job. It seems like when I was an officer, there were more strict rules about who got hired and who didn't.
Right.
So I think that's the problem in police work today is they have lower standards, in fact, than what we had 20 years ago. And I also think part of it is it's made to look worse than it is, the relations between police and people of color, for example, because everybody has a cell phone these days. So a lot of incidents that were not seen before are now being seen.
Right.
Whether or not that means that there's more of these kind of incidences of discrimination among the police towards people of color, I don't know, but it's at least more visible.
Yeah. Liz is going to step aside for a second. The pups are outside. She's going to go grab them in. But so I guess my what I was going to say next is like, for example, going back to what you were talking about, how like they're hiring more of just anybody,
It seems that.
I think a lot of that has to do with when they militarize the police,
I agree. A lot of people, yeah. Well, here's my opinion on that. I talk about this a lot on my podcast. There's a little plug for my podcast. Coming On with John Allen is the name of my podcast. Available on all podcast platforms.
Don't you worry. We are going to put a link to your podcast in our description.
Thank you.
Our pups are on
there's your
that.
puppies.
Yep. Come here,
no, but I think what was I going to say now? Now I forgot what I was talking about.
Police.
Oh yeah. They are militarizing it literally with the type of equipment and the type of policing tactics, but they're also militarizing it by hiring people. It seems like if you've had military experience, that is an automatic thumbs up in the hiring process. And it shouldn't be that way. Now, I got hired after serving in the U.S. Marines, but they still did a background check on me. They still did psychological tests. There still were a series of interviews that I had to go through and perform in. Where it seems today that just because you have served in the military, that's almost good enough to get you in regardless.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's quite right. And I say that in all respect for my military brothers and sisters. But we have to face the facts that now from 2001 up until today, our military people are serving in times of war, and there's a lot of baggage that comes with that.
Yeah.
So there's a screening process that should be turned up, not relaxed. That screening process should be turned up, and military people should be evaluated even more with even more scrutiny now, since we've had all these years of war and combat.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of that stemmed off of the war on drugs, wasn't it? Like to start with?
The militarizing of the police? Yeah. The war on drugs is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to America. If you think of all the money, well, let me just start off by saying that I am a believer in the legalization of drugs.
You and me both.
Yes. And if we think about all the money that we have spent in the so-called war on drugs, and if we would have taken that money and put it into the social support structure, every American could be living so much better than what we are right now. The war on drugs is a fallacy. The war on drugs is a tool to make money for the government. The war on drugs is a tool to oppress the poor, to oppress minorities, people of color. That's exactly what I believe the war on drugs is for.
Oh, 100%.
And if you look into the Nixon tapes, Watergate and all the tapes that they seized, you can hear him saying quite clearly that he wants to use the war on drugs to target certain ethnicities in the United States.
Yeah.
So facts are facts. We just have to live up to it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, like even just taking the minorities and everything else out of that respect, when you're an adult, whatever you do to your body is your choice, right? That's what I would assume. Now, the legalization of heroin will not make me start doing heroin tomorrow.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. Well, I can give you a good example. In Portugal, they have legalized all drugs. Heroin addictions, in fact, have gone way down by, I don't know, I don't have a number for you. I want to say at least 10, 15%. Heroin
Yeah.
addiction and heroin deaths have gone down in Portugal because of the legalization of it. And that's because it is the, you decriminalize it. You're taking a lot of those nasty elements off of it.
Yeah.
You're also taking money that you used to use to fight drugs. You're using it now to treat people who are going
Right.
to be addicts or who are going to use anyway, regardless whether or not it's legal or illegal.
Right.
And those efforts then go towards making people aware of the issue, which again reduces usage, reduces addiction, reduces death.
Right.
So instead of having a negative circle around drugs, you can turn that into a positive circle around drugs where there's less addiction and less death.
Right. And you can, instead of offering imprisonment, you can offer free health clinics,
Treatment, counseling.
drug treatment, counseling, stuff like that. Ways that they can regulate it to where you can not go through a withdrawal when you're trying to quit, kind of like methadone clinics,
For example. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that would solve our drug problem, here in America.
Well, again, it's working in other countries, and America is a beautiful place. I haven't lived there in 20 years, but I'm still American. I always will be American. It's on my passport and it's in my heart.
Yeah.
But having said that, I mentioned a little bit about having a new perspective. I think Americans are missing perspective on a lot of things. And that lack of perspective brings on this national arrogance where Americans automatically think that all things American are the best.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's just not true. It isn't. There's a lot to be learned from observing other countries. Just like we know, you and I know, we all know there's something to be learned from observing other people. So just extrapolate that to a national basis. There's a lot to be learned from observing other nations. And that is something that the American people very often refuse to do, is to learn lessons from other countries.
Right. Yeah, and it just boils down to arrogance.
I think so.
We are fashioned since we were kids that America is the best in the world, and we're the superpower, and that's just the way it is. But then once you get older, and especially now with the introduction of the internet, from then on in, people get to see how the other half live. And they're tired of it. Americans are tired of it.
And not to badmouth America, because there's so much good about it, and I miss it terribly. I'm constantly homesick. But there are certain elements of the American society that can be so much better than what they are if the people would just get their minds around a new way of thinking. There's a lot to be done.
Absolutely.
And I say that being pro-American, because I want our country to be as good as it can be. And part of that is being allowed to criticize and point out what works and what doesn't. Yeah.
Right. So, I would kind of like to shift gears maybe a little bit and ask Snoopy a few questions.
Okay.
All right. So, first things first, what is your take on we'll start with America versus Norway. Like, what what are your pros and cons between the two?
Oh, well, that's an interesting subject. Well, I can say that I can start with the weather. I would love to live in Hawaii because it's a lot warmer and easier, than shoveling meters of snow in the winter.
Oh, truth.
But yeah, no, I think that both countries has, like John said, both countries has good things and bad things, and one of the good things in Norway that I would miss if we were living in the States, I think, is the free healthcare.
Hmm.
Um, and we do have good healthcare, even though it is free. But it's when I say free, we of course we pay for it through our tax system.
Right.
But it is, and then you can argue, well, you just have to take care of your health, and if you don't take care of your health, then why would I pay for somebody else who is smoking and whatnot?
Right.
But you just don't know. Next time it might be your turn, even though you do take care of your health.
That's a
Yeah.
good
You
point.
don't have a paper saying that you will stay healthy just because you eat salad and train
Right.
every day. You know, there's that's just the way life is. So I must say that that's a good thing. I know that if you have an emergency, you can get in the States, and you have um, uh, what's it called? Försäkring,
Insurance.
insurance, and but that takes you to a certain. All of a sudden, that's over. Your
Insurance
insurance
runs out.
covers
Yeah.
it. It runs out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do that here in Norway, and that's a good thing. So, but then and then you can go to the States. It's cheaper to live, a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Here, you have to, if you're going to buy a house in pretty much a district where there's something going on, like nearby jobs,
Oslo or something.
Oslo,
Big
Drammen,
cities.
yeah. You pretty much either have to have a parents that pays a lot of it, some inheritance, um, or you have to be two people.
We
Right.
talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
We don't see how young people can get into the housing market here in Norway. To put it in perspective, like a house, let's say you're up in Kent. I have a daughter and 2 grandkids up in Kent. Okay, so we look at houses there all the time just to keep
Yeah.
up with the prices. A house that might cost 200,000 in Kent would cost about 8, 9, 10 million here. Well, I guess if we keep it in dollars, a $200,000 house in Kent would cost close to
600.
maybe $750,000 in Norwegian money. So that's how rough the house market is here in Norway.
Yeah, I was going to say you have to use USD with me. I don't know the conversion rate.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, so it's of course then, and then you the cost of living, you guys there now, I hear on the news you're screaming, and it's the gas prices are just outrageous, and it's like, oh my gosh, give me your gas prices and I'll be happy.
We pay
Right.
more than 3 times as much for gas here on a normal basis without inflation, 3 times more than what you guys pay.
I believe it, and it's funny because like so on my social media I don't really go political too much, because it always sparks a stupid war. We're like
Yeah.
we're a
Mhm.
2-party system here for some weird
Yeah.
reason, and it's always the left against the right.
Mhm.
And like when there's an inflation, and whatever, it's always the other party's fault. And I actually had made mention of the fact that, I got a vehicle and, like I just purchased a vehicle just in time for gas prices to go up to $4 a gallon, and like somebody said something about it. And I said, well, it's like that everywhere in the world. I said, gas is high. And like, they're like, well, no, it's about it. It's President Biden. He did this, this, and this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, the thing is like everybody in the world's suffering.
Yes.
And they said, that's fake news.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell anybody who's listening who thinks that it's fake news, inflation is worldwide. There's inflation here in Norway now, and it happened at exactly the same time as it started to bloom in the United States. Inflation is not because of any one president. So anybody listening, believe it. Okay, it's not propaganda. It's not fake
Yeah.
news.
And-
We are paying more in everything here in Norway, just like everybody in the United States is paying more for everything. It's a global market. So,
For instance, we had Norway used to have the cheapest electricity in Europe.
Yeah.
Now it's the most expensive
Yeah.
electricity in Europe. And that turned in just a few months. So it's but the thing is that I think with in Norway we have several parties, and right now we have
how many
actually,
political parties are there?
I don't know how many
8, 9?
political parties.
I think there's
tons.
nine different major parties.
But
9.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
we
crazy.
also have like now there's 3 parties that are running together and that's quite common. But the thing is that we can't really blame the parties that are running today. They started they took over in the fall for what's going on now.
Yeah.
And because it takes a long time before the economy changes, laws getting passed, and all that stuff. So that we can blame somebody else.
But see, that's
Yeah.
that perspective thing I was telling you about. If there's Americans there saying that it's the president's fault because of prices and that any news about another country having inflation is fake news, that's that perspective thing I was talking about earlier.
Right.
They have no perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it just comes down to we only see what we want to see. You know, when
Well, that's right. Yeah.
people
And I
don't
think
want to
that-
open their minds.
I think Americans tend to just be like have blinders on. They think that we're the only ones in the world and we're the only ones who matter and we're the only ones with problems,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and you could break it down onto the political level, left versus right. Well, here, the extreme right and the extreme left are both in the same boat where they really lack perspective. They only see what they want, and there's no compromise.
Mhm.
And you talk about a lack of perspective. There is a lack of perspective because when you get on the political extremes, you're not there for the people anymore. You're I can't even say that they're there for their party. They are there for their own little cadre of like-minded politicians within their party, and it's just a power struggle.
Yeah.
That's not politics. Politics should be a good thing. Politics should be the hashing out of issues to the benefit of the people. That's what politics is supposed to be. But now politics has become this opinion game. Politics has become social wars. Politics has become finger pointing and ugliness and accusation. That's not what politics is supposed to be.
Right.
And that we actually left social media for quite a while during the 2016 election because it just got so terrible. And I mean, I'm not the type of person who, I don't like you because you don't believe the same thing I do politically, but that's what we were seeing on Facebook. So we just walked away from social media for a long time.
It was about 2-3 years.
Yeah.
I can see why. It was ugly.
Yeah. And the thing is we, I only wanted to get back into social media to promote my music. So that's the whole reason I started back with social media. And, I think honestly, people scream about their rights, being infringed when they can't post a certain thing on a private platform, like Facebook or Twitter or, whatever. And really, politics should have nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
It shouldn't.
Well, some people use politics to cover the fact that they're just an asshole.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe you got blocked on Twitter because you're a jackass, and that has nothing to do with your political views. You, as an individual, are a jackass. But again, people use politics for everything other than what it is supposed to be used for.
And I don't remember
a lot of idiots use it.
I don't ever remember it being like that growing up. I mean,
No, it wasn't.
It was a footnote almost, and
Exactly.
it's just spiraled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of politicians who propagate it. They put that to use for them. And unfortunately, people, again, lack perspective. And that lack of perspective makes them fall prey to that kind of political leadership. It's pretty sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. But and I think the only thing that's going to back during the Hillary v. Trump election.
The good old days.
Yeah. So Liz and I, as a political stance, we're libertarian. We're open-minded, but we vote libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy running. His name was Gary Johnson. And I personally, I voted for him during the Obama administration. I voted for him for, when Trump won. But his slogan was, why choose the left nut or the right nut when you can have the Johnson?
I love it when genitalia comes into politics. That's the good old days. Now we're going back to the Clinton days. I like it.
That won my heart over. I was like, oh yeah, this guy has to be president. But
isn't that kind of refreshing that a politician can inject a little bit of humor into it and be kind of lighthearted about things?
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
that. I don't know who this guy is, but that right there would make me look more into what kind of a politician he is. That right there catches my attention.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was fantastic, and unfortunately, he's ran for I don't know 4 consecutive tries before he just gave up.
Yeah.
And there was a new politician coming up, and this guy, he's a wackadoo, but he makes more sense than the other 2 wackadoos. This guy, his name was Vermin Supreme. You should look that up sometime.
Vermin Supreme.
Yeah. He wears a boot on his head. Yeah. And it's funny. He's
been in politics forever,
since the late 60s, early 70s, something like that. And he was wacky. I mean, this guy, he had a boot on his head, and he sprinkled pixie dust on people. And let me tell you, he made more sense to me than anybody in office right now.
and he runs on his platforms free ponies for everybody and harnessing zombie power. And,
I love it.
If you're going to have a shit show, you might as well make it a shit show, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm going to say.
Listen, I just want to say that we can keep going until about what would that be? That would be 9, 10, 11. That would be 11:40. At around 11:40 Ohio time, we have to stop.
Oh, that's all right. We're at 37 minutes right now. So I normally run this podcast between 45 and an hour. So we'll be done way before
I did almost 3 hours with a guest yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
I go long.
Yeah.
I go long.
And trust me, John, I could keep you on longer. You are so fun to talk to. You guys
thanks,
are so
man.
fun to talk to.
Thanks. No, we just we have 2 kids, I think. 2? Yeah, and they have to eat from time to time. So
I think food and water helps them grow.
I think somebody told me that. Yeah.
So I would like to move on from the political talk because that's not normally who we are. It's kind of fun.
No,
to
not
talk
us either.
Time to time.
Yeah.
But so. Let's see, where did we leave off with your story? It was because
Snoopy was telling. Snoopy was kind of talking about the differences between
Norway
America and Norway.
Yeah.
I had told the story of what brought us here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, if you would like to continue, sorry to cut you off for so long.
No, I just know to not get into the political thing because then we'll be sitting here for hours. So.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. No, and I'm not a politician, and my podcast is not a political podcast, but I do enjoy talking about it because it's there's a lot of things that need to be discussed and all that. Yeah. So
she's like, I got a story to tell. I'm going to tell it.
There you go, Snoopy.
Yeah.
It's all yours.
Yeah. No. Well, that's we got to the insurance thing.
Yeah.
And healthcare. Yeah. But I would say the school system in the States, I like that. You guys have grades from the start.
There's no grading system for their first 8 years of school.
8 years, yeah.
None whatsoever here.
What do they teach? Like manners and stuff?
Well, you can actually fail in there.
Well, it's very interesting because they teach everything that they're supposed to teach, and there is a system if a student is falling behind where they can get help to get caught up. But still, in the end, there is no formal evaluation of what they've done. It blows my mind.
It is an evaluation in a way. You know, the teacher would say, tell the parents if a student has trouble with math.
Okay.
Yeah,
you know,
and then they'll do what it takes to fix it. But in the end, there's no evaluation of their work.
And for some students, a lot of students, I think that is okay because it's so much stress when they're little to have grades to worry about. They're kids; they need to play, and they kind of a lot of their learning is in their play. They use play in school too. You know, where they are outside, they run around. And then they take 2 + 2, and then you need to figure out the answer. And that's how many times you need to run back and forth.
Okay.
You know, so they do physical things in order to learn at the same time.
In a way, I kind of see that a little bit beneficial. You know?
Well, I do. I see there's a lot of benefit in it, and it is a more relaxed childhood. But what I see, and I worked as a teacher, I worked as an educator here for quite some time in Norway. And what I saw was that when all of a sudden after 8 years, now you're going to be graded, that some kids just lose their freaking mind. They don't understand. They can't handle that demand. Now you've got to perform, and now we're watching you. Now it counts. And I kind of feel like that's a little too late.
You're not allowed to have any competition, so to speak.
Yeah.
When I grew up, we would compete in sports at school. We would it was fun, you know.
Yeah.
Who's better in spelling or whatever. But that went away in the early 80s.
Yeah.
But then you guys, you have after school, you have sports and all kinds of groups, and it's at school.
Right.
And here in Norway, the kids comes home, eat dinner and all that, and then the parents has to take them to somewhere to do whatever sports they have, and it's the parents that runs it.
It's very impractical. Much. It's a huge burden.
It is
on the family.
And
the more kids you have, the bigger the burden is,
and the more expensive. And because you have to pay for sports gear and all that yourself,
right?
It's really rough, and it gets to the point where I don't like our kids. No, but it is a burden, isn't it? It's a lot of driving, and here in Norway, with these long distances at times between places, it's a lot of driving. It's a serious issue, to where I feel that it comes to the detriment of the family unit at times.
Well, you have to. The parents have to. If the parents is not the trainer in the soccer team, we have to raise money for the soccer team.
Yeah.
So then we have
to
go and sell waffles and whatnot, you know. And it's I think the system you guys have is a lot more fair, because now it is so those kids who has just one parent, they can't go really, because the parents can't do the volunteer things that much, and it costs so much. It's time consuming, so they get left out a lot. Not everybody, but some.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the States, anyone can.
It's more inclusive because it's under the umbrella of school. You finish school at 3:00, and football practice starts at 3:30. So there's not that big burden,
right?
Transportation and volunteer work and all that stuff on the parents. It's a lot better back home. I miss the athletic system.
Now, I will say this
back home.
I will say this between the athletics and schooling and everything. Now, that does also kind of trim education for some people, because they put so much, say, into their football team. The quarterback, we'll go with that. So the quarterback, he always gets good grades. It doesn't matter if he's dumb as a brick or, but he always gets good grades so he can remain the quarterback, and I think that kind of trims their education a little bit sometimes because there's
I saw that.
It is still like that though? Because I know it used to be like that.
I saw that big time playing college at Ohio University, playing college football. Mm-hmm. There was a big handful of guys there, and I have no idea how they had an IQ higher than a rock.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And yet, and I know they weren't going to all their classes, and yet they had passing grades because of that. Let's call it what it is: corruption between the athletic system and the school system.
Now
but I think there could be something in between. Yeah. It doesn't need to be that in order to play on this team, you have to have these good grades. I don't think that should matter because sports is also a social learning time, and that is very important to have those skills.
Right. And I do,
especially in today's society.
I think there should be a good checks and balances between the teacher and the student as well. I mean, if you have a student who is, say, the quarterback of the team or the star basketball player, whatever, and they are required to have a certain GPA, then
that's what we had in high school. That's what we had at Norton.
Yeah.
And the head coach was a very influential teacher at the high school at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is another, a benefit of the way the system is in the States. They don't have that here at all.
And I think that there should be a secondary hand on those papers that the student turns in to achieve those grades. Just so there's a checks and balances system between, the sports department and the high school,
Well, and again, we had that at Norton. I don't know what the cutoff was, but if our GPA went under a certain amount, we were considered suspended from the team. If there was a book report or something that was supposed to be handed in and it wasn't, you didn't get to play that week.
Right.
So we had things like that. But, you go to these big powerhouse football states like Texas or Florida or California, where it's basically a business. There's a lot of that corruption where the athletes, there's pretty much no demands on them when it comes to their academics.
Absolutely. So let's see. It's 11:25 now. I'm going to run this for the 15 minutes you guys have left. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So America versus Norway. You like the schooling system. Now I got a question for you, Snoopy, as far as the schooling system is concerned out there. Do you start around the same age that we start here, between like 4 or 5 years old? Sending them to school, because it's like kindergarten, I think, is between 4 and 5 years old, depending on what your birthday is.
5 and 6.
Is it 5 and 6?
5 and 6.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, and we
first grade is their first school year. I'm sorry, you're supposed to answer. Yeah. Your name is Snoopy. I'm not Snoopy. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
I'm used to being on the mic. I have to say, I guest a lot on other podcasts. I'm a guest a lot. This is the first time I've been a guest with her, so that's why I keep hogging the mic. I got to get used to,
Anyway, you're show off, aren't you?
I'm just going to say this: after the podcast, she's probably going to kick your ass, and it's fine. I won't say anything. I won't say anything.
She gets stabby at times.
No, they start when they're 6 years old.
Okay.
It used to be 7, but last 20. 30 years has been 6 years old, and before that they can choose whether, or the parents choose whether they go to daycare or not.
Okay.
So yeah.
And we know that Norway is a veritable paradise. What is your favorite thing about Norway, as far as like just whatever you like to do out there?
I can go wherever I want to. I can go into my neighbor's property and I won't get shot. I can walk into the woods wherever I want to, somebody's property, and somebody owns a part of the mountain or something. I will not get shot. I can walk there, and I'm allowed to by law. If somebody has a beach property, I can sit on that beach. By law, they cannot deny me to do that. So we're very free when it comes to using the nature. There's if you want to go fishing in lakes, you have to buy like a license, but it's not like a lot of money. Anyone can afford it, but if you are, I think it is up to 15 years old, it's free in order to teach the kids to fish and all that stuff, appreciate nature. That is the one thing that I was missing most of all when I was in the States.
Yeah, and here you have to have certain permits and licenses in order to do stuff like that, like fishing and whatnot, going into preserves and, Yeah. Yeah, I mean, here you can go on most people's property. Most people don't own a gun, but there's a lot that do.
Well, in Ohio, it's concealed carry also. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And June 12th, we go into constitutional carry, which myself, I actually have a CCW. So does Liz. Yeah, we do protect ourselves because we do live in Akron, and there is, a potential threat here.
Yeah. Sure.
Well,
sure.
then we could. That's about when you come to gun control. I think your guys' laws are just nuts.
Oh, they really are.
Right here, right now, I'm working on getting my gun license. So first,
and I'm very frightened.
No, I used to have guns, but because I sold them, now I have to start all over again, and the laws have changed.
Yeah.
So I have to have a certain time at a
gun club.
And I have to shoot so many times and practice so many times and pass some classes. I've been a member there now for a couple of years, and I still haven't shot enough times. And then I can apply, but it has to be a certain caliber, and I need to put up what I'm going to use it for. And if I don't follow up in the gun club, then I will lose that gun.
Yeah.
So it's very, very strict.
Right.
So and I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe people should be allowed to carry in the States. But I do think it's ridiculous that it is so unregulated as it is. Why should vehicles, car insurance, a driver's license, why is that more regulated than guns in the United States? I don't understand that. I would like for everybody who wants to carry a gun, I want them to do that. But I just wish there was a little bit more oversight. And I think some lives would be saved if there was.
Well, I think Ohio kind of did it right in a manner of speaking. Their concealed carry course is the requirement is only 8 hours. And I think it should be longer than 8 hours. I think there should be a few days where you go in and you train, and then there should be a good 4-hour shooting range, But
and now that we have the constitutional carry coming into place next month, there's a lot of argument about you should still take that class because.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I would think most people should want to have a class and more education in how to use that gun properly and safely. If I'm going to carry a gun, I'm carrying it because I want to protect myself and my family, and I want to be able to do that to the best of my ability.
Right.
So please give me as much class work or as much education and learning around that gun as possible, please. That's my thought.
Don't you think that people just watch some cool movie and think, oh gosh,
yeah, of course you've got some. Of course you've got some, and that's the whole point. That's why it should be a little bit more regulated than what it is, so that you weed out those kind of people.
Yeah, and then you got these people
I think it's still too easy.
I think we got these people now, they're going to pick up weapons and just think that they're an expert shooter, and they'll buy full metal jacket, ammunition.
Exactly.
And and not realize that it's not what you're pointing at, it's about what's behind it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's also the fact that the kids growing up nowadays, what do they learn? okay, they learn with all these games that there's no blood coming. Well, there's no blood, so it's okay. And in their little minds, they think that they can just shoot and somebody
Well,
will
I think
stand up.
a lot of that disappears with age and wisdom and life experience. But still, this whole thing of having less regulation on gun ownership instead of more, I think is wrong.
Right.
We're gonna see there's some people who are gonna die because of it unnecessarily.
And that's kind of the point that I've tried to make to people. I mean, it's probably going to be about a year before people realize that, hey, there's repercussions for your actions. You know, like it's you may be able to have that gun and you may be able to shoot that gun, but remember that there is a lawyer attached to the bullet that you're shooting right now. And
exactly.
You know, and people don't realize that. They, you know, I think the responsibility lies on the gun owner and to do what they need to do. And I try to advocate as much as I can to people who are like, well, might as well not go get the CCW. I'm gonna wait for next month and go constitutional carry. And I'm like, yeah, but what kind of training do you have? You know,
exactly. They're doing themselves a disservice, and it'll start to come out with a few incidents in the news and a few statistics down the road. But I think they're going to see that, and this kind of goes to the social political situation in the States. I believe that a lot of people know that their thinking is wrong, their actions are wrong, but they have this pride in being a far right follower or a far left follower, and that pride will not allow them to outwardly express that they are wrong or that they are willing to change.
Right.
And I think we're going to see a lot of that now with the new gun law coming in Ohio.
Yeah.
There's people who are going to know that it's not the right thing, but they'll never admit it.
But see, here's the thing. We don't really have mass shootings in Norway. We had one in some years ago, but the police doesn't carry guns here. But neither does the citizens. We are not allowed to carry guns. When I get a gun, it needs to be locked up unless I'm at the shooting range.
Right.
And then,
yeah, but you're a law-abiding citizen, and law-abiding citizens in the States also do what's right.
Yeah.
What about the criminals? They're not going to listen to laws anyway.
I've been in the States, and I've been shooting, going out in some sand pit and shooting. That was not a gun range.
Yeah, that's with you and your hillbilly friends from Minnesota. The thing is
that here we have half automatic guns. We can't have those crazy military guns that anyone in the States almost can have. What do you need like a machine gun for?
Well, even
walking
those
around in the streets.
That's
just nuts.
Even those are regulated a bit more, like the fully automatic weapons. The average civilian is only allowed to own a semi-auto. And
but bad guys don't.
But it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop criminals. It's kind of like having, a CCW versus not having the CCW. Criminals don't give a shit about CCWs,
Exactly.
And neither do they in Norway. But the fact that it's the criminals, they know that average citizen don't have a gun, so they don't need to kill him.
In other words, the fact that in America, a lot of people can have concealed carry, that is a deterrent for a lot of crime. Is that what you're saying?
I think that because if I'm a criminal and I'm not sure whether you have a gun or not, I better have
so in other words, it's a deterrent.
Big gun so I can get you first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's kind of funny that this subject did come up. Our episode that is coming out tomorrow, that is based on the reasons why we got our CCWs in the first place. Liz, I'm
going to check that out. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I want you guys to check that out because it's scary. It's like the proverbial white van story. In fact, that's the episode. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I'm excited. I want to hear that.
Yeah. And so it looks like we got about 4 minutes. What I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap this up. But I love talking to you guys today. I want to do this again. I want to bring you guys on again.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll speak for myself. Now she works a lot of night shifts, so she's not as available as I am, but I'm available.
Okay.
Yeah. I work from home, so yeah.
Yeah, I would love to have, pick a time when Snoopy's available. I want both of you guys back on. I want to hear the rest of your story. We did get kind of sidetracked a little bit today. But it's okay. Like I said, this podcast is going to be vast, and you're going to, I'd like to have you guys on maybe in another month or something.
Sure. That's the way I do things on mine too. It's just a conversation, and it goes where it goes, and it doesn't go where it doesn't go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so again, I want to thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I will see you guys, I hope, next month. So
for sure we'll find a day.
And I'm going to leave links to your podcast under the description of this one. You're looking at let's see, you'll be about 2 weeks out from the date of recording. Yeah. So that's so if you'd like, I can send you.
I'm looking forward. I was going to say, I'm looking forward to having you guys on my show as well.
Yeah,
that's coming up next Sunday.
Yeah. So from us here, we're your hosts. My name is Dave.
And I'm Liz.
And we want to thank you. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.